Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sarah Montague. For decades, many have assumed that the only way there will be peace in the Middle East is when the Palestinians have their own state. But President Trump has made it clear that America is no longer wedded to the idea. 2 states, 1 state, I can live with either one, he said. My guest is Tzipi Livni, the joint leader of the Zionist Union opposition in Israel's parliament and a former foreign minister. She has said the only way to achieve peace is to have 2 states for 2 peoples. But why is that? Could 1 state where Jews, Muslims and Christians are all treated equally have a greater chance of delivering peace? Tzipi Livni, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you. Hello, Sarah.
Why do you say that the only way to achieve peace is 2 states for 2 peoples?
The conflict is a national conflict between 2 national movements. One is Zionism that acted for many years in order to establish a state for the Jewish people, and the other is the national Palestinian movement. And as far as my understanding goes, and according to negotiations that we held before, the idea is to end the conflict and to end all claims between these 2 movements and between the state of Israel and the Palestinians is by having different states for 2 different peoples in which each people implement their own right of self-determination. And in Israel, Israel is a Jewish democratic state, and the meaning is that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people with equal rights to all its citizens, because Israel is a democracy and because these are also our Jewish values.
But there is an argument that has been tried for decades, or at least that has been the ambition for decades unsuccessfully, which is perhaps one reason that Israel's president, Reuven Rivlin, talks about annexing all the occupied territories, and he says that there won't be one law for Israelis and another for non-Israelis. You would grant citizenship to all residents, and it would be one egalitarian democracy.
Listen, this was the idea of Likud members and my own parents, basically, after '67 war. The whole idea was that we would live happily ever after, giving equal rights to all those living between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. But in the end, this can lead to a situation in Israel in which Israel would stop being a Jewish democratic state. And we would have a binational state, 1 state, with everybody living there, but I think that it would not be, living happily ever after. It would be more bloody. With this ongoing conflict amongst us. And this is against what I believe is the vision of Zionism, to create a state for the Jewish people. And in this state, everybody is equal rights citizen.
Is it down to the demographics then? The idea that if you take in 2.5 million Palestinians, that's the end of a Jewish state?
Yes, in the end, listen, we live, and my values are to keep in harmony the values of the State of Israel as a Jewish democratic state. And this is also a question of number. We need to have a Jewish majority in order to keep this and not to have a clash between the values of Israel as a Jewish and democracy. And therefore, if I need to choose between the entire land of Israel and keeping the State of Israel as Jewish democratic state, I prefer to divide the land and to have Israel and to keep the Israeli values. I would like to refer also, this was basically the idea in 1947, when the United Nations wanted to end the ongoing conflict that was here before the State of Israel was established, and the whole idea was to divide the land into 2 different states.
Just on this question, the idea of what 1 state could look like, Saeb Erekat, who is the PLO Secretary General, has warned that the way that some people envisage it, it would be an apartheid system. Is that something that you would fear too?
Israel would not be an apartheid state. I would fight against it inside Israel because this is against our values.
But you recognize it as a fear?
Giving equal rights. Sorry?
You recognize that as a fear of having 1 state, do you?
I believe that this is something that most of us, Israelis, would reject. This is against our values. And therefore, in choosing between all the options, as an Israeli, I believe that the Israeli interest is to divide the land and to have two different states. Frankly, I'm not fighting for the establishment of the Palestinian state. I'm fighting in order to keep Israel as a Jewish democratic state. And Saib Arikat, from his point of view, is fighting to create and to establish a Palestinian state because he represents the national aspiration of the Palestinians. Now, I would like to say something about what President Trump said. I mean, what he said is not, he said what makes you happy makes me happy. But he also said it depends on both sides. So in a way, I'm not against thinking outside of the box. And there is another idea that can give an answer to our aspiration, to the Palestinians' aspiration, another idea that can keep Israel as such. Let it be. I mean, I would like to listen to it.
But as you say, this is exactly the point that he made, is that it hasn't worked so far. And as he said, it's something that is very different, hasn't been discussed before. And he actually went on to say it's a much bigger deal, much more important deal, in that it takes in many countries, would cover a much larger territory. I mean, do you recognise that by opening this up, there could be some chance of a very different route, but the one that leads to peace?
Frankly, I believe that at first, even before entering to the negotiations room, Israel and the Israelis need to decide what is our direction, what is our goal. And in a way, when President Trump put this on the table, I'm using it in order to say to Israelis, okay, the two options are on the table. What do we prefer? In an understanding that there will be no situation in Israel in which you have two different kinds of citizenship, because Israel is not going to be an apartheid state. And maybe by raising this option, this can lead also to an internal debate in Israel, because I know that vast majority of Israelis supports the idea of two states for two peoples, not for the Palestinians, not as a favor to any president of the US, not as a favor to the Arabs or the Palestinians, but this is the way to keep Israel as such. And therefore, I believe that even the debate is something that maybe is good to have.
Okay, but what we know, what we know is of information that's come out in the last few days, not least from your fellow leader of the Zionist Union, Isaac Herzog. He's talked of a deal that was on the table last year from the US Secretary of State, John Kerry, which was put to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and one that he walked away from, one that would have involved a freeze on settlement constructions and reaching out to Arab nations with some sort of proposal for a comprehensive peace deal.
And you know that I'm in the opposition with the Herzog, and both of us believe that what represents the interest of Israel is to try again and again until we find a way to end this conflict, based on the idea of two states for two peoples. And there are opportunities, not only a year ago. There is this opportunity still on the table in a way.
But with Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister, because your colleague has accused him of being a serial refuser and saying history will judge him on that failure.
Yes, that is true. You know that I joined this coalition before, tried to negotiate. We didn't reach an agreement. I have also criticism on the other side, by the way. But it is true, and now it's more clear to the Israelis, that what this coalition represents is something that would not lead to peace or to the end of conflict. And more voices within this current coalition, led by Netanyahu, are talking about annexation, something which is against the interests of Israel. And now what we represent is something which is completely different. And in the end, we would reach elections in Israel, hopefully sooner, and put this on the table and to say, okay, this is what they represent, and we represent something else. But I do agree that this is the responsibility of any leadership, and by refusing to all these deals or suggestions and negotiations that are based on not only on the relations between Israel and the Palestinians, but also on the possibility to change the situation, the strategic situation of Israel in the region with the Arabs. They know, and I know this, most of the Arab world or the moderate Arab Sunni state, they want to normalize their relations with Israel, but their glass ceiling is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And therefore, we can do something which is bigger than just, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And unfortunately, Netanyahu was not willing, couldn't, didn't want to. It's less important to say yes to all these offers that were on the table. And they are on the table right now, I believe.
The offers are still there, but what he's saying no because of those he's in coalition with, those to the right of him?
Excuse me, this is the excuse. This is the coalition that Netanyahu formed. He had another coalition. We were in this coalition, me and Yair Lapid, others that represent the idea of two states, or basically the idea of concessions and steps toward the Palestinians. And he toppled his own government and led to elections by saying that he wants to form a coalition based on what Netanyahu called his natural partner. So it's true. Okay.
So,
I am not his natural partner, but it is his choice.
Would you go Would you go back into government with Benjamin Netanyahu if he were to be open to accepting the deal that you say is still on the table, a deal to head towards peace?
When a year ago, when this deal or the offers or what was on the table was when I was told about it, and I was asked whether I want to join the government based on this, I asked several questions, few questions, frankly. Is he willing to free settlements outside of the blocks? Is he willing to give up Bennett in his, the far right, in his coalition? Is he willing to make more positive comments on the Arab Peace Initiative? And when the answer was no, I said no to the question whether I would join the coalition, and therefore I'm in the same position. The reason for me to be in politics and to try and move forward toward peace treaty, if we have problems on the way, and sometimes we have problems on the way, so let's find the way to move forward. And settlements activities, especially outside of the fence or legalizing illegal outposts, are against what I believe is the interest of Israel. And this is something that should be avoided. And as long as Netanyahu supports it, I cannot be part of his government.
You talk about the outposts, but you have... we're in a situation where the United Nations has again condemned the building of settlements, and we've had people suggesting, not even President Trump saying, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit, because it is seen as eroding the prospect of a two-state solution. But you are happy for there to be some settlements. Indeed, you would continue building in settlement blocks, wouldn't you?
Also the Palestinian negotiators, I believe that any American president understands that when we finalize the border or delineate the border between Israel and the future Palestinian state, we need to take in consideration what we call blocks of settlements. These are the places in which most of the Israelis are living, hundreds of thousands of them, and the good news is that it takes only a few percentage of the West Bank, and therefore when the Palestinians are speaking about adjustment to the 67 line and they want compensation for this, this is something that is negotiable.
Okay, but you will know that the UN resolution... The recent resolution, UN resolution 2334, that was passed in December, when the United States abstained, allowed it to be passed, it reaffirmed that the building of settlements on Palestinian territory occupied since 1967 was a flagrant violation of international law, and it did not distinguish between the settlement blocks and the outposts, as you were trying to do.
Unfortunately, I'm familiar with this, unfortunately, and therefore I believe that any agreement would lead to an understanding that these blocks of settlement should be part of, as final status agreement, part of Israel. And frankly, what I said, what I criticized the Israeli government is by saying that when you don't make your own priorities, when you don't come saying, okay, I want to keep the blocks, but I'm willing to give up the places which are outside of the blocks, or I'm willing to freeze for now as, you know, a message of a goodwill, the outposts and settlements that are outside of the blocks. And so the meaning, if the Israeli government cannot make these priorities, the world is not making these priorities.
So, and as far as you are concerned, what percentage of the settlements do you think are acceptable, would you characterize as being settlement blocks? Because for people outside Israel, it is very hard to get their head around this. And so to get some sense of what you think is acceptable.
Well, you know that I'm not going to negotiate this with you, but when I said that it takes only a few percentage, we are all talking about one digit, and therefore there are gaps because we need to take,
we're talking about less than
10%.
Less than 10% of all the settlements that have been built.
Yes, and this is something that should be negotiated between us and the Palestinians, and they want compensation for it. But it's not important, you know, what you think personally or others are thinking about settlements activities, whether they are part of, you know, against the international law, or whether they are part of the Jewish people coming back to the land of our forefathers. We are talking about realities on the ground. And since most of the Israelis that are living outside of the 67 line are living in these, what we call blocks of settlements, so the realistic solution should take this in consideration, because otherwise it's impossible to think that we can reach an agreement. Now, I can assure you, as the chief negotiator on the Palestinian side and somebody who still meets, you know, also the Palestinian side, they understand this as well. And in the past, we got President Bush saying that this should be taken in consideration when we would finalize and delineate the line. Trust me, the problem that we didn't reach an agreement was not about this percentage.
Okay, but we are of course now, we're with a different,
to be solved.
We're with a different US administration, one that's talked about being keen to move its embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. And that is something you would support?
I'm an Israeli. Jerusalem is our capital.
But you know, you're also a politician. You know the consequences of that. You know that it would be seen as if it were...
But this is an American decision.
As if it were Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem, even if it were in West Jerusalem.
This is an American decision. And as I said before, as an Israeli, Jerusalem is our capital. And I hope that you don't expect me that I would represent here in our talk, hard talk though, the outcome of this and what the Arabs would say, what Jordan would say, what the Palestinians would say. I'm sure that the new administration...
You have in the past, you have been honest enough to say, look, I'm not going to be politically correct about this. I'll talk about settlements as a burden. Here we are with something that is widely recognized.
I am still talking about new settlements as a burden.
As far as the embassy move is concerned, it would be seen as a highly provocative and unnecessary move. Are you not prepared to say that?
No, because I believe that it depends on whether it would be, you know, one step doing, okay, we are taking the embassy to Jerusalem and that's it, or whether they would recognize things that are connected also to the interest of others in the region. So I believe that this is a question not only of taking the embassy, but the context that it would be done.
So if
I have some ideas about it,
the former Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry, says everyone knows such a unilateral move is the end of two states, is he wrong?
As I said before, I'm sure that the new administration, and I know that they started already asking our neighbors, asking the Palestinians, asking the Arabs what would be the implication, and it's for them to say how this is going to impact them.
Is it true?
And I hope
is it true that you have been offered a job at the United Nations?
I prefer not to refer to this publication and speculations.
But you had a meeting with Antonio Guterres.
This is going to be my only answer, I'm sorry.
But you can answer this question.
Sorry.
You have a difficulty with travelling. You have a difficulty with travelling, not least because when you came to London, there was a summons issued for you. That when you went, you were going to be going to Belgium in January, a trip that was cancelled, and it's known that prosecutors there were going to ask for you to be questioned. Do you have a difficulty with travelling, a fear that there will be arrest warrants issued which stem from Operation Cast Lead in Gaza when you were Foreign Minister?
No, I don't. As you know, I visited London, and I didn't. The trip to Brussels cancelled for other reasons. If I didn't know about this story that was raised in the newspapers, but I'll check it. But I want to say something about this in general, not about me and not about traveling. You know, Israel is fighting terror, and the operations in Gaza are against terrorist organizations that doesn't represent a national conflict, but a religious conflict that in a way represent all this extreme Islamist ideology that is against, not to say peace, but against even the existence of the State of Israel.
Okay, but Operation Cast Lead was in response to something else. We only have a few minutes, so I'm keen to get... Operation Cast Lead was in response to the firing of rockets into Israel.
Sarah, it's very important for me to say so. Hamas is being delegitimized by the entire international community. They are acting in terror against our citizens. And I believe that this is not only the right, but the responsibility of any Israeli leader as a member of cabinet to fight against terror as any state in the free world would do.
But and in a way, other states have not had the response that the United Nations did to Israel. A UN report accused Israel of committing actions amounting to war crimes and possibly crimes against humanity.
No, I know that there was a report, and afterwards Israel worked in order to open everything. We are checking ourselves. Our Supreme Court is checking every event that's happening. Frankly, just tomorrow we are going to have the verdict of an Israeli soldier that acted against what we believe, not only the international law, but our laws. But I want to tell you something, Gil. I just came from Munich. There was the security conference there. And as I said before, we are members, Israel is a member of the free world. We are fighting together with others against terror. And it's in order to defend civilians, trying to avoid any civil casualties. And while you are asking me these questions, you know, Zarif was there, the foreign minister of Iran, a state that supports terror, supports Hezbollah, that act in terms of terror also on European soil. So I'm not, you know, I'm willing to answer any question. And I'm proud that I had in my life the possibility to be a member of the Israeli cabinet and to fight against terror.
Do you think President Trump means peace is more likely in the Middle East?
I don't know. I want at first to say that the former administration and especially Secretary Kerry invested in it, and I highly appreciate it. The good news is that President Trump said, I want to make a deal. And he said that this is his priority, and therefore any American president who wants to make a deal, speaking about peace in his first meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, it was good to hear. And it is true that he said not only the two-state solution, but if he wants to invest in it, if he wants to achieve peace, let's hope that this is what would happen. It's a mutual interest of all of us.
Tzipi Livni, thank you for coming on Hard Talk.
It's a common interest. Thank you.